Welcome back to Ask Sandra. I'm your host, Sandra.
And I'm Rosaura Figueroa Mendoza, Rosa Salvaje with #Mujer TV.
I want to thank you for coming by and helping guest host today's episode. We're going to have a lot of great topics. We're going to be talking about the Might and Voice Leadership Council. We're going to be discussing Aisha Wahabs' win, which I know we both have supporters.
It was huge in Hayward, so.
It was great. Yeah. We're going to be talking about the importance of independent journalism. So it's going to be a great episode, but first we're going to start off with a real tragedy that happened here in Hayward, which was the shooting of Augustine Gonzales by Hayward Police Department. Unfortunately, he lost his life, and we were able to speak with his family, Augie and Carla Gonzales, who really shared their story and their heartbreak that they're kind of going through right now with the loss of their son.
Yeah, and it was interesting how you were telling me how, you were doing the interview earlier and that they had barely received the call today, right, of what had happened, like the details of what had happened, right? And so it's really, I can see how it could be really frustrating for people to try to get answers, right, for their family and things like that when it takes so long to even get a piece of information. And so, you were telling me about the interview. How did you feel like the family was doing? How were they handling the death of their son, basically, at the hands of the police?
It was really, they were in a lot of pain. It's an unspeakable loss that they suffered. And what makes it really worse is that they just don't know exactly what happened. There's a lot of discrepancies in what happened. They weren't told. They weren't notified for a long time. And I think that there should be a process for families to be able to get some closure. And they're already suffering so much that this really just adds another layer of suffering to this loss that they faced. And I think that the city of Hayward has a responsibility to put out the facts so that, there can be trust in law enforcement.
Yeah, for sure. And actually the way that I found out about Augie's death was, so we were talking earlier about how Carolina Olvera, she was also beat up at the hands of the police maybe mid-November, right? And so we posted her story on Instagram, and then somebody commented, oh yeah, Augie Gonzales was killed. Agustin Augie Gonzales was killed like a month ago or something like that. So it's like these are things that come up and people don't have a space to actually talk about these things until a tragedy happens. It's like, why do we have to wait until a tragedy happens or a death happens for us to be able to make a change in that arena?
That's true. And when you don't talk about these things, when there isn't a process for information to get out, that's when there's distrust in law enforcement, when families don't want to call for help, when their family is facing a mental health crisis. Families need to feel safe to be able to rely on law enforcement to help de-escalate these situations. When I spoke to her, they need to be trained. They need to have training in crisis management and how to de-escalate these situations. Like you said with Carolina, she wasn't even accused of anything. She was in a car with someone who had a warrant, and she was beaten really badly by 4 men. We always talk about violence against women, and I just think that there are better ways to handle those kind of situations than to have a video out there of 4 men beating a woman. That's what, like,
and all of that,
pounds?
Yeah, and all of that ends up being really traumatic for the person, right? I would imagine like what Carolina's going through right now. Like, you're supposed to feel safe calling the police, and okay, this is who I call when there's an emergency. But then she had this tragic incident happen to her where she doesn't even feel safe. Like, she doesn't trust the police for obvious reasons, right? Of having been beaten up, and so. It's like, then who are you supposed to call when there's an emergency or your family's life is in danger or something like that? And then you also talked about mental health training, right, for police. Okay. There's a such thing as mental health first aid. Are police taking this? Like, why are they shooting 13 shots? Like, for example, that's how Augie was killed, right? There was 13 shots to him. And so it's like, why is there so many shots being taken at this person? And there's rubber bullets, there's tasers, there's other less non-fatal ways of being able to deal with situations.
And when you are there with someone who is facing a mental health crisis that may be, not pose a danger to others, but really to himself, I don't think that the steps should be with that person ending up dead, So we understand that law enforcement comes into situations that they don't really know what to expect, but the reason that we allow them to have guns to really kill us if they feel the need to is because they're supposed to be the heroes. They're supposed to go into these situations and really do their best to make sure that the person that's coming out of the situation comes out safe and alive themselves as well. They put themselves at risk, they put other people at risk in the community.
Yeah.
So there needs to be more training for officers so that these kinds of situations can resolve themselves in a more peaceful and safe manner for everybody involved. Because it's also traumatic for the community, right? The community sees these situations and how they handle it. You know, it's a horrible tragedy what happened to them, but the secrecy is another huge issue, and it's it's something that we've seen in other cases here in the Hayward Police Department, and there needs to be more civilian oversight. There needs to be more accountability to make sure that when these things do happen, we know the truth and that family members know what's going on, and there's not all this secrecy surrounding it that makes it look like something is not right.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point that you bring up about police officers. You know, they're putting their lives on the line as well to protect and serve, and so it's important to think about what are they going through, what are they feeling, and how. And I like what you said about how do we ensure that it's a peaceful situation for all involved, right? And people are not dying at the hands of the police, and the community is living in fear of the police when the police is supposed to be the people that protect them, right? And so I would advocate and I would support training for police around mental health first aid, but then also having that community oversight, right? There has to be a mediation between the community and the police, because right now there seems to be a lot of, it's really easy to get angry and frustrated, and for obvious reasons, like Carolina, for example. I don't know what she's going through at the moment, but I know that she has posted on Instagram, this is traumatic. And just saying that is like, it takes a long time to have, and then people have talked about, like, you don't have to go to war to have post-traumatic stress disorder. You can get it from like a traumatic situation that you went through, right?
Absolutely.
That you're not able to go back to your life and function the way a person would had they not gone through that situation.
Absolutely. And with that, I want to take it to our next video, which is a great interview that we had with the family of Augie, and hopefully we can get some answers for his family. Check it out. Welcome back to Ask Sandra. We're here with the family of Agustin Gonzales, Carla, Augie, and Christina, who was tragically killed by the Hayward Police Department. Can you tell us a little bit more about Augie and who he was?
Yes, my son, we called him Augie, little Augie, he was taller than me. But he was a hard-working family man. He had 2 young kids that, his daughter just turned 9, so they were 9 and 10. He still lived at home with us and out in Lathrop, but he commuted out to Tesla, where he worked at in Fremont. So he used to work between 50 and 60 hours a week, sometimes 6-7 days a week, and on his off time, it was really just spent for a family. He grew up really in a big, tight environment. We're really family oriented, and he kind of took it from there, and always wanted to spend time with the family. Family outings or whatever, and he was just a goofball, just fun to be around, and everybody in the family, he always brought it, everybody got excited when he would get there because he liked to be, center of attention, and he was a jokester, and so it was a big blow when it happened, but, that's why it's hit the whole family and friends and family so much, because he was so loved by everybody.
I can tell you guys have suffered such an unspeakable loss, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions that you want answered. Can you walk us through a little bit about what happened that night and what officers told you?
Well, what we know is, from what they told me, is he was at his ex-girlfriend's house. It was an on-again, off-again relationship. And he was there, and we don't know what happened. We just know they had maybe a disagreement, and so he just he was in a depression stage, going over that for a couple of months because of his relationship, and I guess he just got to a breaking point that day, and they said he had brought out according to them, that they had gotten a 911 call saying he had a knife by the neighbor, and that he threatened him, according to him. And so he was just holding it, not threatening to kill anybody else or hurt anybody, but just, he was just holding it there. And from what we heard is, you could tell he was depressed and sounded like he needed help. And yes, crying and that. And so when the police arrived, they told us there was 3 cops that was there. And first thing they did is they just asked him to put down the weapon, and we don't know how many times they asked it, but so he refused, and then what they told me is then he approached them, and then they took it another way, and they just, the only way they thought, I guess, is by shooting him, and they shot him at him 13 times. And
he was 10 to 15 feet away, so he had took a couple steps towards them. It didn't really say that he charged them. It seemed like we assumed that it was steps because that's what we read. So 13 shots for, that's just why wasn't a taser used or, something else. I mean, they couldn't stop him from, shoot him in the leg or something. But 13 shots is a little bit exceeds for just a razor.
Absolutely. And I think that the national conversation and here our local conversations have to be, how do we de-escalate this, right? How do we train our officers to make sure that that's not happening? What would you like to see to make sure that other families don't suffer this tragedy when they have family members that might be going through some kind of depression or mental health issues? And, if we do call law enforcement, to make sure that our family members are safe and they can de-escalate that situation.
They need to be more trained. I mean, you had one officer that had 28 years experience, so you would think that he would have had a little bit more training into trying to, talk someone out of, trying to do anything instead of just shooting. So I really think that a lot of officers nowadays, it's like, what kind of training do they really have? What kind of schooling do they really have? It's just like you go to the military and they have a lot of training, and you become a lawyer, you have training, you have nurses, that you have licenses. But police officers, really, what kind of training do they have? And they're all, either youngsters or they've been there for years, but, it's just, they need to have more training.
I completely agree. And, I know you have a lot of questions for the Hayward Police Department and for the city of Hayward. What answers do you guys want so that you guys can get closure for this tragedy?
Number one, really is just from what we just explained is basically all we know. We still don't know what time the incident actually happened, what time was he taken to the hospital. All we know is after they shot him is they handcuffed him and then just waited for ambulance. There's a discrepancy in what they have given us. Did he pass away that night, or was it the next day?
We have two different, we have one saying that it was Friday, and we have others saying it was Thursday. So kind of have to wait for a death certificate to really find out when my son died.
Right.
And that's kind of unnecessary. I think the process should be a little bit more. It's like, okay, so if he died on Thursday, we were not told until Friday afternoon. That's giving them, 14 hours later after the incident of my son to contact a family member when they knew. They have a registration, they have his car, he had his license, they had an ex-girlfriend there that could have told them.
Right.
But we don't know why we weren't told.
Right.
We should have the right. No family, no mother, father should ever go through the weight of finding out what happened to their son.
Absolutely. And we will be reaching out to the City of Hayward and the Hayward Police Department to see what they can tell us. Again, I appreciate you guys coming and talking to us about this really important issue that's going on in our community. I'm really sorry for your loss. You're watching Ask Sandra. Stay tuned.
This next song is called Reality, and it's about the way society is and how people are always thinking about how they look and what other people think about them, and how it doesn't have to be like that.
Welcome back to Ask Sandra. I'm your host, Sandra.
And I'm Rosaura Figueroa Mendoza, Rosa Salvaje with #Mujer TV. So we are going to talk about Aisha Wahab and her historic win in Hayward City Council. So she's actually the first African American elected to office in the United States of America in history. So it's a huge win, and I know you interviewed her, Sandra. I interviewed her as well on #Mujer TV. If you want to find that interview, it's actually on haystackmujer.org, haystackmujer.org. So check it out. And so, yeah, this is really. Her win is really, really important. She's a woman, she's young, she's progressive. Like I mentioned, she's Afghan. And so it's really, really important to bring that voice onto the city council, because a lot of the times, especially in my experience, the Hayward City Council, it has been a little bit difficult to bring forward progressive issues.
Right.
We made Hayward a sanctuary city in June of 2017. That took a long time. It took about 6 months. We've been pushing forward housing policies to protect tenants, and it has been really interesting and frustrating at times, and kind of just trying to find that way, right, of wanting to do grassroots organizing and bringing about change in Hayward. But sometimes it's hard when you're confronting, these folks that have been in office for a long time, and sometimes you feel like, do they really understand me? And so Aisha's win has been really key, and I'm excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, and I think the fact that she is an actual renter is such a huge thing, because when you're a homeowner, you don't necessarily feel that pain that we're feeling as renters here in the Bay Area, where rent is increasing. We have rent control in Hayward, but the amount of rent-controlled units just is like minuscule. And I think that that's one of her issues that she really is trying to push, is to get those numbers back up, because being a renter just gives you a different perspective, and I think that that's so important. The fact that she's a millennial, the fact that she's a progressive, having that voice there is going to be such a huge change for the city of Hayward. I think it's going to be great. I'm really excited for her.
And I mean, this girl attends like rallies and meetings for fun. Like,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it's like cool. Like,
Yeah.
it's really good. And you had a conversation with her when you did your interview, but I'm sure, and I think you might have mentioned this, like when she was breaking down issues, it like made it so easy to understand the issues, right? And I feel the same way, like whenever I talk to Aisha, because she's able to take concepts that I just don't understand and just break them down. It's like, okay, cool, I get it. Like it's in a digestible form, right? That I can actually get what she's saying and also connect to it. So.
Right, and she's really inspirational. I think that one of the things that she said during my interview was, if you don't see the woman, be the woman, and that is really what it's about. We've seen so many historic wins. We had a huge blue wave, but we also have so many women elected this year, progressive voices, and that's what we need to do if we really want to make those changes, so it's not like takes a year to pass something that most people support. I think that by getting money out of politics, she's not taking any money from corporate donors. That is such a key thing, because you have people that donate to your campaign, or you work at certain places, and then you're voting on issues that directly affect them. And whether you vote yes or no, is kind of a coin toss, but there should really be no money in politics, because that just muddies the water. And what it does is it takes the interest of people out of the minds of some of these people, and it clouds it with a special interest.
Right. There's a conflict of interest there, where you're not actually standing on the side of the people. Instead, you're kind of just going where the money flows. And so that's an issue, right, that we need to confront and have a dialogue around. As a single person, I'm not going to solve that, but as a community, right, we need to have that conversation and that dialogue in order to make those changes at the local level, and then it translating right to the federal level, eventually at the national level. And so this win by Aisha, I mean, I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited. I mean, honestly, like, I've been to city council meetings, they're boring, unless I'm like doing a public comment or whatever it is. And I think that's just the setup. Like, it's not a comment on anybody in particular. It's just like, that's just the setup. Right? And so I hope that people will feel encouraged, right, to go and give public comments and tell the mayor, the city council, hey, I want this on the agenda because I think this is important, right? And they're very receptive. Like, as long as you, for example, if you go to the haywardcollective.com, we're the Hayward Collective on Instagram as well. We're posting, the email listserv of the mayor and the city council, so that folks have that access to be able to be able to email.
Yeah.
You know, it should be that easy. Like, let me just email the mayor and the city council.
It really should. And we can really see that there is a huge kind of interest in local politics, not just because of the national one, but I think Aisha herself really inspired a lot of people. I think that people felt a voice that really was a voice for themselves, and you could see it at her swearing-in ceremony. People were going insane. In fact, yes, it was packed, and people were just cheering for her, and it's a great win for progressives. And we actually have her swearing-in ceremony. Ask Sandra was there. Check it out.
Cool.
Aisha Wahabs.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasions.
And that I will well faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties on which I am about to enter. Thank you.
Three. Oh, I get you in here. 3, 2, 1.
This level of enthusiasm. So, with that, welcome, Councilmember Welcome, Councilmember Wahab, to our dais and to our City Council. Congratulations, Councilmember Lamden as well. And so, I think now it's our turn to say a few words, and I'm going to ask our new council member if she will start.
All right. So thank you very much for being here. I've had quite a journey, and I'm very, very excited to be a part of Hayward City Council. I am truly honored and humbled to be elected by the people of Hayward to serve all of Hayward. I want to first thank every single voter that voted in this election cycle, regardless of whether or not you voted for me. Voting is a privilege we can never take for granted, and I'm very proud that you cast your vote. I want to thank every candidate that ran to improve the community in every single race. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of discipline to run an election cycle. I want to thank every donor and every volunteer that put their hard-earned money and valuable time in this campaign. We could not have done it without you. We've had volunteers come out every single day, walk 8 hours a day, from places as far as Tracy to just even 13-year-old interns that wanted to be a part of this campaign. So I really, really thank all of you guys. I want to especially thank my parents for being supportive. I want to thank my sister for constantly encouraging me. And I want to thank my cousin and campaign manager, Nergis, for joining me in this adventure from the very beginning. I ran because I believe that the people of Hayward were struggling and hurting. I've been a resident of Hayward for many years, and even though I wasn't born in Hayward, Hayward belongs to all of us, and we all deserve a voice, and that is one of the reasons why I decided to run. I believe that we needed to focus on issues that impact the most marginalized communities, and I plan to do just that. I want to really thank everyone that actually stood up and decided to endorse me, to work with me, to volunteer with me. I always say we because it's not about an individual, it's not about me, it's about all of us together. I want to thank from the Labor Council to the building trades, the Democratic Party, every individual that was a part of this campaign. I really couldn't have done it without any of you. On the campaign trail, I overcame many of my own fears, things that I didn't really think about until I decided to run. I heard the comments about my race, my age, my capabilities, my values, and much more. At times, my voice shook as I continued to challenge the status quo. As a challenger, we had every card stacked against us. I was told not to run, to consider a different seat, and to wait my turn. I learned that I was seen as a threat. Sadly, this threat came with a message of equity, opportunity, and community.